Hi everybody, it's Mr. Sean again. Welcome back to our second online class. Hope it's going well with you. I hope you enjoyed the last one. I have another one for you. It's got some interesting things in it today. Talking about mousetraps and biological irreducible complexity. Really fascinating subject. Every time I read this, I think, man, this is just really clear. It's something you don't have to be a biologist or a scientist to understand. It's really common sense and logic. And it's really good stuff. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you've read the chapter. If not, please do. And I've gotten homework from probably about half of you last week. I'm going to be sending a little reminder to your parents this week that I'd like to have you do the homework and email it to me. At the end of this video, this whole video, I will give you my email address once again and also my cell phone number. So because we can't meet as a class, it's really kind of disappointing. I really enjoy being with you guys every week and having a chance to hear what you're thinking and ask you questions, and especially role playing, and then of course the raffle too. So I'd like to get to do some of that some more, and if you need to, if you have questions or you'd like to ask, give me some comments, and particularly if you'd like to give me any comments on how these online classes are going, let me know. If you have a suggestion to do it better, I would love to hear it, because this is kind of uncharted territory for me. So first time we've done a class like this. Also, if you would like to try to have a live online session, I don't know that we really want to do that for the whole class, for the whole hour or hour and a half. And I'm trying to cut these down to about an hour and not make them quite as long as we are when we're in class, because there's not much interaction with us. But if you'd like to get together on a Zoom or something like that, where we, all of us or some of us, could meet together and just have a little discussion, a little back and forth, maybe even a little role playing, then I'd be more than happy to do that. So just let me know if that's of interest. You can, like I said, you can call me, you can text me, you can email me. I have plenty of time to talk to you, and I would love to do it. I miss seeing you. So we're going to do one more online class for sure. Then we're going to be out for Easter. Great opportunity for apologists to talk to people about the fact that we celebrate Easter because it really happened, not because it's just a happy little time. So got a lot of opportunities coming up. I hope you guys are doing well at home, getting out, getting some exercise, and able to keep up with your studies and doing well. Again, give me a call if you have any questions. Text me, have your parents call me, text me, email me. And I'm looking forward to getting back with you guys just as soon as possible. So I'll see you next week, and have a good week this week. Thanks. So this is class number 8, halfway through. When we're done with this class, we'll be halfway through the semester. We'll be wrapping up Lee Strobel's book here, and then we're going to turn our attention to sort of a wrap-up of science in general, and to show how science actually points towards a creator, towards God, towards the reliability of the Bible and the resurrection, rather than against it, as a lot of people seem to think. And it's up to us to try to help them understand what the facts are, to get the truth. So our motto, one of the mottos we put up from time to time, is to be ready. And that comes from 1 Peter 3:15. In all your hearts revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. But do this with gentleness and respect. So we need to be ready whenever an opportunity presents itself, or we see an opportunity that we get a chance to talk to someone about their faith. We want to be ready, and that's why we take the course, and that's why we get trained in this. We're sort of like, we call it the Department of Defense. We defend the faith. That's what apologists do. And so we can consider ourselves that it's kind of at the front line in some cases, particularly against atheists, or people that have been hurt by the church, or people that have really been told a lot of lies, just gotten all their information from the internet maybe, and other people who are really just aren't interested in helping people find the truth, but just want to promote a particular worldview or something. So you have an important job to do, and I hope you're excited about doing it, and let's get going. Oh, by the way, if you find a misspelled word in the things that we have here on the PowerPoint, as you know, you get an extra raffle ticket. Last week, there were 2 spelling errors in the presentation that I'm aware of. This week, you'll probably find at least 1 or 2. And if you email me or text me, or however you want to get in touch with me, let me know that you found it. I will put an extra ticket for you in the bucket for when we get back and start drawing for the $5 gift cards to Chick-fil-A or In-N-Out Burger. Last week, I only had 1 winner. She called me or emailed me when she turned in her homework, and she's going to win an extra ticket. So there's still another word out there that nobody has found yet. So if you want to go back and watch last week again, or pay attention to this week, if you pay attention, you'll probably find it. So our assignment for today, so this is for today. You've probably already done this, but let's review it. It'll be to watch this video, which you haven't done. You're watching it now. Hopefully you've read chapter 5 of the Case for Christ, Student Edition. If you haven't, I might even suggest you stop the video now and go back and read it, because you'll understand what we're talking about a lot better if you have. And then I'm going to ask you to fill in the blanks on the notes page that I'm going to send you. And I'll have it, it's with emails, the same email that sent you the link to this video, so presumably you do have it. And you print it out, fill in the blanks, and send them back to me at email at tedshawn@me.com, the same email that I will have sent you the link with. Then for next week, I want you to read chapter 6 of the Case for Christ, Student Edition. And then next week, of course, a week from today, or whenever you watch this, in 1 week, watch next week's video, and I'll send you the link as soon as that's ready. We've been talking about fallacies, and we know that a fallacy is a failure in reasoning which renders an argument invalid. And if not completely invalid, it doesn't make the argument. It's really kind of nonsensical, and you shouldn't really take what the person says as being truth. You need to explore it more. You need to talk to them about what are they really talking about? How do they come to that conclusion? How do they get there? The fallacies we've talked about so far are the straw man, the ad hominem, the red herring, and the circular argument fallacy. Today I want to talk to one about snob appeal. You could call it a lot of different things in the book that we're using, or that I'm using to get these from, the Fallacy Detective. It's called snob appeal. And what it means is, it's when someone in their argument or in their presentation to you, they try to persuade you to think that their product or view would make us better or make us stand out from everyone else, make us cool. Now, this is done a lot in advertising, and that's why we refer to a product here, but it could be a view as well. One really simple-minded example is buy skunk perfume. You will stand out from the crowd. Well, there's no doubt that if you smell like a skunk, you're going to stand out from the crowd. That's not necessarily a good thing. Let's do some others that might be a little more subtle, that you might find yourself getting kind of caught up in. One might be, hey, when you get to college or high school, join the atheist club and hang out with the smart people. Well, it doesn't follow that if you join the atheist club, you're going to be with the smart people. There may be some smart people in the atheist club, but it doesn't follow. It doesn't have anything to do with why should you join the atheist club. But what they want you to think is that, well, if you're an atheist, you must be smart because you've thought things through. They always try to present themselves as being the deep thinkers and the intellectuals. And in virtually, well, I don't want to say every case, but certainly in the vast majority of cases, it's pretty much just the opposite. They really haven't thought it through. They haven't thought deeply about it. And they've just started going with slogans and maybe being, falling victim to the snob appeal thing themselves. If they have a little group of people, a little clique of friends that they all want to go around saying they're atheists, and that makes them cool, and they want to say they're smart. And of course, by saying they're smart, they're trying to imply that those of us who believe otherwise aren't smart. So that's one example. The other one is this, and this is one that you see all the time, every day, particularly in advertising. Join, and then you name the celebrity, whoever you want to say, join that person and say drink Coca-Cola, or be an atheist, or go to this church or that church, or become this or that. And the idea is, if this celebrity who you think is cool and may be cool, and who you like their music or their writing or their dancing or their whatever they do, some celebrities are celebrities just because they're a celebrity. But if you think that if I can join them and do what they do, then I'll be thought to be cool too. I just use the example of Coca-Cola. It could be anything. Drive this kind of car, wear this brand of clothing, watch these TV shows, just like your favorite celebrity or somebody you look up to. Later in the semester, hopefully we'll get back together. If not, I'll do it online. I'm going to show you some TV commercials from the past, and maybe we'll find some current ones as well, where they use this kind of fallacy, and they try to say, well, if this person does it, they're a cool person, so therefore you should do it. And probably the worst example of that, and I've got some videos to show you, is where celebrities and even cartoon characters will be put into TV commercials to promote something. And the example I'm going to use is cigarette smoking. There were cartoon characters, there were all sorts of celebrities promoting smoking, and made you look cool if you had a cigarette in your hand, or a pipe, or whatever it is, cigar. But the fact is, you smoke and you have a very good chance of getting cancer or emphysema or some other terrible disease. And yet these celebrities were promoting it. Now, they don't do it anymore, but they were. And it's not to say they wouldn't be doing something like that going forward. And so you want to be really careful as to whether you want to believe what a celebrity says or somebody that you may admire for some other reason, but they could be absolutely wrong about this. So the next one is, and this actually comes from a real commercial. It was caution. Buying a Nissan may promote feelings of superiority. Nissan's a brand of car. And what they're trying to say there in kind of a sort of subtle way is if you drive a Nissan, you're going to feel so good about yourself. You're going to feel like you've got the best car on the road, and therefore you're the coolest person on the road. And so you probably ought to want to buy a Nissan. Well, not true. Buying a Nissan may or may not promote those feelings, but as we know, feelings have nothing to do with the truth. And the question is a Nissan the right car for you? Is it a good buy? Is it a good bargain? Et cetera, et cetera. Another one you may find, people in various versions of this, would be skeptics. And by skeptics, I mean someone who is not a believer, could be an agnostic or an atheist. But skeptics make better grades than Christians. And they may say that because, well, we're skeptics. And remember I said they like to hold themselves out as being deep thinkers and free thinkers and open to all kinds of new ideas. And they've heard all these new ideas and the arguments. And now they've decided to be, a skeptic, an agnostic, an atheist. And so therefore they must be smarter, and therefore they must make better grades than Christians who, as we all know, aren't really that bright. That's kind of what's all tied up in this thing. And so this is really a complete fallacy. Skeptics don't make better grades than anybody else. Just being a skeptic doesn't make you make better grades. But again, it could be used to sort of try to shame somebody or pressure someone, a Christian, to declare themselves a skeptic, and then people will think you're smarter than they used to. This little cartoon I found in the book, this is a lady walking her pet porcupine. It's on a leash, and the ad looks like it's put up by the Porcupine Breeders of America, and it says porcupines for the discerning pet owner. So what they're trying to say there is if you are a discerning person, someone that can tell good from bad, truth from lies, value for non-value, then you're going to want a porcupine. Again, absolutely no correlation to the truth, but trying to get that snob appeal thing in there. So that's the fallacy for today. If you get a chance, think of some. You probably have an opportunity in the homework to give me an example of your own of what a snob appeal might look like. But that's one that's really subtle and used a lot in the world today. So you really want to be watching for that one. Now, we always talk about the world is full of illusions, and I'd love to be able to show you one of my own illusions, and maybe I will next week. I'll video it and maybe teach you one as well. But for today, I found one that's one of my favorite tricks, and I'd love to do this in class, and in fact, I may just to show you up close how it's done when we get back together. This is called an illusion in plain view. As you can see in the picture there's a man sitting in the seat holding a roll of toilet paper between his two index fingers. That toilet paper is probably worth about $100 today. And the magician is the guy in the blue shirt, and he's showing him some tricks. Now, what's going to happen here when you see the video is the magician is going to fool the guy in the seat pretty heavily. The guy looks really surprised and baffled, but everybody else in the audience sees exactly what's going on. They have no doubt. In fact, they're laughing at the guy in the seat. And eventually he comes to find out what's going on. But it's an example of the illusion isn't always for everybody. Not everybody sees the illusion the same way. It depends on your point of view. This guy sitting in the chair is restricted to looking straight ahead, not behind him, not to the side, but the audience can see all around him. And you'll see what I mean here when you watch this video.
Now there are two things a magician can do. I can either really put it in my left hand or kind of fake it and keep it in my right hand, all right? We're going to start really simple for you though. Here we go. Left or right, nice and loud.
Right.
Left or right, nice and loud.
Left.
Left. Give a round of applause. I'm trying to help you out as we go. Trevor, the key is to watch the moment it touches the hand right there. Left or right?
Right.
Right? You hesitated. When you hesitate, Trevor, we'll do it again. We'll do it again. No hesitation. Trevor, the key is to watch the moment it touches right there. Here we go. I'm sorry, let me tell you. Left or right?
Right.
See? We'll do it. I know what the problem is. There are two white things. Very confusing, right? Okay. I'm going to lower that one, put that across your chest. We'll take it out of the play. Come on! Slow motion, right? Here we go. Left or right?
Right.
It's actually on your chest. Look down. We'll do it again. Just leave it there. We'll do it one more time. I'm going to come over here. Hold on. Here we go. Yeah, it's catching on there. But lean forward for this. Lean forward. I really want you to see the moment it goes right here. Here we go. Left, right, around your chest. Yeah, we can do it. Loosen your hands a little bit, there we go. We'll supersize it. You know any more trees in Georgia, do you? No, they don't supersize it in cones anymore because this is what happens right here. Supersize, super crap, right? Yeah, just making sure, right? No funny bits here. Check this out. All right. Perfect. Trevor! Your chin! Are you sure it's not on your chest? Yeah. Lean forward, Chris. I'm going to try to do something Chris Angel-like abilities. Check this out. I'm going to try to make this giant wad of toilet paper disappear. Would that be amazing if it was gone?
Yeah.
I'm not that good. Yeah, right. There's a flaw in it. Check it out.
Okay, that is a hilarious trick. I've done it many times to people. There's different versions of it as well that I'll show you when we get back together, but it almost never fails to work. So while you're sitting at home and you're sort of in a quarantine, not able to get out, doing things around the house, hopefully not everybody saw this video at the same time, and maybe you can fool people with that trick while you're at home. In any case, let's turn our attention now to Mr. Strobel and his book, The Case for a Creator. We're working out of the student edition. I think I've given most of you, anybody that asked me, I gave you a copy of the big book, if you will, The Case for a Creator. If you didn't get one and you want one, ask me for it, and I will be happy to give you one when we get back to class. So we're going to go to Chapter 5, and in Chapter 5, it's entitled Mousetraps and Molecular Machines, the Evidence of Biochemistry. So, you know, previously we've talked about a lot of things in the evidence that in Darwin's theory that we've said that he really didn't know a lot about what was going on deep in the cell at the molecular level. He thought the cell was just sort of a one blob, if you will, of sort of protoplasm, something that was alive but wasn't really sure how it worked. And so he was looking kind of from the outside in to see how he thought things worked. And even though he didn't have a lot of evidence, he has some circumstantial evidence that he put together his theory. Well, now as we learn more and more, as science itself brings us more and more skills and more visibility into the molecular world and the nano world, as Dr. Tour was talking about last week, we begin to see that some things just aren't working the way that Darwin probably thought they were, and we may want to take another look at it. So we have the video that Lee put together for this, Mousetraps and Molecular Machines. If you read the book, you understand where mousetraps comes into this. That's just kind of a simple example of how these molecular machines are put together, supposedly by evolution, and the evidence that says, maybe not. So let's take a look at this video, and then we'll continue the discussion.
Biochemist Michael Behe was an ardent evolutionist when he was doing postdoctoral research in genetics in a laboratory like this one at the National Institutes of Health. One day he and a colleague were discussing what it would have taken for life to have developed purely by naturalistic means. They began to list the complex and interrelated parts that would have been necessary even for the most primitive cell. Things like proteins, some sort of basic genetic material, a membrane, and so on. And then they looked at each other and said, nah. I mean, they concluded that there's just no way life could have sprung into existence unaided. Later, Dr. Behe read a critique of neo-Darwinism written by an agnostic geneticist by the name of Michael Denton. Before then, Dr. Behe thought that only religious nuts questioned Darwinism. But now he wasn't so sure. Today, Dr. Behe is a professor of biochemistry at Lehigh University. Through the years, he's discovered that some of the biggest challenges to Darwinism, as well as some of the strongest evidence for a creator, can be found in something very, very small: the living cell.
Throughout the second half of the 20th century, spectacular technologies revolutionized scientific understanding of the cell, the basic unit of life. During an interview with biochemist Michael Behe, Strobel learned how this new knowledge has shaken the foundations of Darwin's theory.
In the 19th century, when Darwin was alive, scientists thought that the basis of life, the cell, was some simple glob of protoplasm, like a little piece of jello or something that was not hard to explain at all. But with the hard work of science in the 20th century, we've seen that the cell is far from simple. It's got very complicated molecular machines and things that are very resistant to Darwinian explanation.
Michael Behe has devoted his career to the study of the design and operation of the cell. He has also written extensively on the biochemical challenge to evolution.
Most people have no idea of how small and complex cells are. A typical cell from you or me, called a eukaryotic cell, is probably 1/10 of the size of the head of a pin. And yet, in that single cell, there are about 3 billion units of DNA, making out the chromosomes. And those 3 billion units make the molecular machines of the cell, literally machines that make the cell work.
With computer animation, we can enter the cell. Here, the staggering complexity of its molecular machinery is clearly seen.
It's like going into an automobile factory. The factory has a large number of machines. The parts have to fit together in very specific ways to do their jobs, and if things go wrong, the cell is in big trouble. And just one cell is enormously complex, but humans, you and I, are made from trillions of cells, and those trillions of cells have to fit together in the right way and do their own job. Darwinism was a lot more plausible when we were thinking about globs of protoplasm than it is when we're thinking about molecular machines.
Each of these biochemical machines is a masterpiece of engineering and nanotechnology. They are essential to functions as vital and diverse as vision, photosynthesis, and the production of energy in the cell. Michael Behe has studied several of these machines, including the flagellum, a remarkable rotary motor.
I remember the first time I looked in a biochemistry textbook and I saw a drawing of something called a bacterial flagellum with all of its parts in all of its glory. It had a propeller and the hook region and the drive shaft and the motor. And I looked at that and I said, that's an outboard motor. That's designed, that's no chance assemblage of parts.
Behe's reaction was not surprising, especially when the bacterial flagellar motor is animated and magnified more than 50,000 times to display the details of its construction and operation.
Howard Berg at Harvard has labeled it the most efficient machine in the universe. These machines, some of them are running at 100,000 RPMs and are hardwired into a signal transduction or sensory mechanism so that it's getting feedback from the environment.
It's got some tail proteins which act as the propeller. When the flagellum rotates, these push against the water and therefore push the bacterium forward. And the motor uses a flow of acid from outside of the cell to the inside of the cell to power the turning.
The bacterial flagellum has 2 gears, forward and reverse, water-cooled, proton motive force. It has a stator, it has a rotor, it has a U-joint, it has a drive shaft, it has a propeller. It's not convenient that we give them these names. That's truly their function.
In all, about 40 different protein parts are required to build a flagellar motor. Half of them are constructor proteins, specialized mechanisms that assemble the flagellum's individual components. Since its discovery, biologists have tried to understand how a machine of such superb design could have arisen gradually, without foresight or plan, through the biological pathway Darwin envisioned.
I think what Darwin was trying to show was that things that look designed aren't really designed, but that we can find naturalistic processes to account for the complexity of life.
In his study of evolution and molecular machines, Michael Behe has raised a significant challenge to the creative power of Darwin's mechanism of natural selection. It is called irreducible complexity.
Irreducible complexity was coined by Mike Behe in describing these molecular machines. Basically what it says is that you have multi-component parts to any given organelle or system in a cell, all of which are necessary for function. That is, if you remove one part, you lose function of that system.
Irreducible complexity can be illustrated by a familiar, non-biological machine, a mousetrap. The trap is composed of 5 basic pieces: a catch to hold the bait, a strong spring, a thin bent rod called the hammer, a holding bar to secure the hammer in place, and a platform upon which the entire system is mounted. If any one of these parts is missing or defective, the mechanism will not work. All components of this irreducibly complex system must be present simultaneously for the machine to perform its function. Catching mice. The concept of irreducible complexity also applies to biological machines, including the bacterial flagellum.
All told, there are about 40 different protein parts which are necessary for this machine to work. And if any of those parts are missing, then either you get a flagellum that doesn't work because it's missing the hook or it's missing the drive shaft or whatever, or it doesn't even get built within the cell. You can't put something like that together gradually because they need a large number of parts interacting with each other at the same time before they work at all.
Without the tools to observe the machinery of the cell, and long before the idea of irreducible complexity, Charles Darwin offered a way to test his own theory. In Origin of Species, he wrote, "If it could be demonstrated that any complex organ existed, which could not possibly have been formed by numerous, successive, slight modifications, my theory would absolutely break down."
Darwin acknowledged that if someone identified a biological system that could not have been constructed in incremental steps over long periods of time, then his theory would be invalid. And what Michael Behe and others have discovered is the existence of biological machinery that cannot be explained away by Darwinian processes. Darwin's failed predictions have in fact falsified his own theory.
Dr. Behe made a very interesting observation at the end of our time together. He said that some people believe that science needs to pretend that everything works purely by naturalistic means, and that intelligent design is somehow giving up. But he said science should be about the pursuit of truth. Newton and Einstein, for instance, didn't think that the job of science was to come up with some sort of self-sufficient explanation for nature. The question ought to be, where does the evidence point? Toward or away from a creator? Well, based on what we've learned so far, let me just ask you that question. Where do you think the evidence points?
Okay, just a quick review on some of the things that were covered in the video there. Molecular refers to microscopic, something that's not visible to the human eye. A cell, a bacteria, a virus, lots of things in our body, when you get down to the smaller parts, are just not visible. And we call that a molecular level, the molecules that fit it together. And machines are just things that have many moving parts, and they contribute to them working well and working together. They all work like one unit. The parts aren't just going off in various degrees, various areas. They are all working to achieve what the machine is there for, what its purpose is. Irreducible complexity. Irreducible means a machine that's simplified to its most basic level, that if you removed any component, it would not work. And that's what he's talking about in the mousetrap, that if you took one piece of that away from the mousetrap, it's not going to work. And complexity means it's an advanced, it's multi-parts, it's complicated. It's not just like a bar or a brick, something like that doesn't have but one part. We're talking about irreducible complexity, something that's complex enough that if you take away any one part, it no longer works. And in biology, that means multi-component parts within a specific cell. And all of them are necessary to function. If you remove just one of them, the whole machine is rendered as useless. And the mechanical example, where we move it up to something we have experience with, we've seen before, and we can touch, is the mousetrap. Now, going back to remind you, Darwinian evolution and macroevolution, that's what we're talking about, is defined as a gradual change through unguided mutations, unguided. In Darwinism, there is no plan in mind. When the first little critter, one-cell critter, came onto Earth, in his view, it didn't know it was going to end up as humans or giraffes or elephants. It was just going out and seeing what happens. So through unguided mutations and then natural selection over a long period of time. And the idea is that if you have a mutation of a animal or a species or even a small, simple animal, like just a few cells, if the mutation causes it to be able to find food better, to find safety better, to live its life better, protect itself better, then that animal will be able to survive better than the others. And so it will be naturally selected to survive because it's got some advantage. Let's say if you had a creature that had no eyes, and then some mutation caused that creature to suddenly have an eye, he would have an advantage over all his competitors. He would know where the food is, he would know how to get away from danger, and that would be then presumably natural selection would say that animal is going to continue on while the others are going to die out. So it requires that life would develop purely by naturalistic means. There is no room for any guidance, not a designer, not a god, not anything causing this thing to move in any particular direction. And a cell, of course, is the basic unit of life. That's the unit that we're talking about here in this lecture. So in testing his own theory, this is really interesting. I remember reading this when I read The Origin of Species. Darwin said, and I think just to his credit that he said it, I don't think he was being arrogant, but who knows? But he said if it could be demonstrated that any complex organ, we just talked about complex organs, existed that could not possibly have been formed by numerous successive slight modifications, my theory would absolutely break down. And I've always wondered if Darwin could see what we know now, would he say, yeah, I was wrong. I thought I had it, but I didn't. I got to go back to the drawing board. In any case, that's what scientists are doing now, is they're having to go back to the drawing board because what Darwin postulated just really, it does not seem to be possible. As you saw last week, Jim Tour talking about it, this is a little more detail of what he was talking about. So the molecular machines within the cell must have been created gradually over time. Darwin never says, oh, all of a sudden, as the example I gave before, which is not something he would have said, you have a creature that's blind, has no eyes, and suddenly there's a mutation and you have an eye. He would have had to say that the eye was built up by gradual changes. And each change may not really give much of an advantage to the animal. So the question is then, how could it have been selected? How could it have been naturally selected, been more survivable? because that one little part didn't get it anywhere. And it's got to be step by step. And the example here they're using is from the mousetrap, the block of wood that's the base, then the hammer, et cetera, et cetera. But Darwin's theory of evolution is survival of the fittest. So a block of wood, if going back to the mousetrap, that might eventually become a mousetrap wouldn't survive past its block of wood stage. The block of wood doesn't give the critter any advantage, doesn't get you anywhere. You would just say it's useless. It wouldn't develop. It would become extinct. So molecular machines like the mousetrap are irreducibly complex. Without every component, the machine breaks down. Now, there may be some exceptions to this, and you'll probably hear that from proponents of Darwinism to say, well, maybe it got them part of the way. Let's say as you're developing an eye, maybe some tissue developed that you could detect light from dark so that the creature could maybe have some sense that I'm about to run into a tree because it looks dark up there. I'll go towards the lighter area. You can make that argument, but there are plenty of examples where it just does not work. And one is the one we're going to talk about, the bacterium flagellum, in a bit. So it would mean, though, that if you just get part of a thing, your natural selection is really going to eliminate it. It's going to be like everything else. It doesn't have any advantage. It's not going to let it survive so they can get the next step and the next step. That would take a plan. That would take somebody superintending this to make sure it works right. So the mousetrap, I think you've probably seen a mousetrap. I know there's much more advanced versions now that do all kinds of cool things, but this is the mousetrap he's talking about. It has the board at the bottom. It has a spring that makes the trap, the bar come down and hit the mouse. And you generally put peanut butter or a piece of cheese at the other end. And as soon as anything sort of triggers that little trigger there, it releases the bar and the mousetrap snaps. So, and it hurts if I've had them snap on my finger. So what's it consist of on its most basic level? It's the hammer, the holding bar, the spring, the catch, and the platform. If you remove any one of those parts of the mousetrap, the machine is useless. You could put it out to market, so to speak, and you wouldn't sell any of them. They don't do anything. Now, some people will argue, well, yeah, if you didn't have some of that stuff, if you just had the spring and the hammer, well, maybe you could use it as a tie clip or something like a paper clip to hold papers together. Well, that's fine, except that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about something that will catch mice, and it's not going to work without all the parts. Random processes don't put the mousetrap together gradually because every part has to be there at the beginning if you want to end up with a mousetrap. This is a photo. I think you saw him interviewed in the video. This is Dr. Behe. He works at Lehigh University in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Very nice man. I've heard him lecture a few times. And this is that bacterium flagellum that they're talking about, which is a bacteria. And then you see that long stringy thing hanging out. That's his propeller that I think Behe says reminds him of an outboard motor. And that gives that particular bacterium an advantage because it can move around. It can go around and look for food. It doesn't have to just lay there and wait for food to come to it. So you'd argue that this thing probably has some advantage over other bacterium. But the issue is, how did it get that way? Could it have developed slowly? Or did that thing have to be there, all the pieces together, like the mousetrap, for this thing to work? And the answer is, yeah, it couldn't have developed over time based on irreducible complexity. Let's take a quick look. I want to show you a little bit more about the bacterium flagellum. It's a very popular example in apologetics and in intelligent design community. In fact, some people have said this bacteria is the mascot of the intelligent design community. Let's talk a little bit more about what they're really talking about here, what this bacterial flagellum is, this propeller that propels this thing. This is just a diagram of an artist's rendering of what it looks like. And the point is, you don't need to worry about the terms, what they mean and everything. Propeller is what you would expect. That's what kind of goes through the whatever fluid it's in and helps the thing propel itself. There's a universal joint, there's bushing, stators, drive shaft, rotors. Those are all components you would expect to find in an electric motor. And so the thing is really a pretty complex thing. It's not just a blob of something sitting there in your bloodstream. This thing has got a lot of mechanical parts in it, if you will. They're all made out of living things and enzymes, etc., proteins, but nonetheless, it comes together in the shape of something that looks a lot like something that was designed. What is it? It's like an outboard motor. What does it do? Why it's important? It propels the bacterium. It's important because we believe that its presence sort of answers the deal that Darwin was talking about. If it could be exhibited, that there's something that couldn't be assembled by very, very small changes, that it would disprove his theory. This thing is called, I don't know that it's true or not, but it's called the most efficient machine in the universe. It does 100,000 RPMs. Now, let me tell you a little bit more about it, but 100,000 RPMs, that's revolutions per minute. In other words, it goes in a complete circle 100,000 times every minute. That's fast. It can stop on a quarter of a crank. In other words, it just takes it a quarter of a rotation to stop and begin turning in the opposite way right at 100,000 RPMs. I mean, are you kidding me? I'm not aware of any mechanical systems we have that can do that. It takes 40 different parts required to build this motor. And so the question is, how could that develop gradually? If you had just the propeller and nothing else, that's not going to give that bacteria any advantage over other bacteria, and it's not going to get selected according to Darwin's theory. And Darwin said that things that look designed are not actually designed. We can find naturalistic processes for the complexity of life. And I've heard other scientists say things like, well, it looks designed, but we have to really discipline ourselves to realize it's not designed. That does not sound like to me like a steely-eyed scientist trying to find the truth. It sounds to me like somebody trying to promote a particular view. This is an example, just to give you an idea, those of you that aren't really up to date on RPMs. This is a Honda S2000 sports car, pretty cool car, and its engine turns at a maximum RPM of 9,000. The little bacteria that's inside that driver's body is turning at 100,000 and can turn on a dime, more or less than a dime. So pretty cool machine, this little thing. Behe says, if the creation of a simple device like this mousetrap requires intelligent design, then we have to ask, what about the finely tuned machines of the cellular world? So going from the mousetrap that we can see, and it's pretty easy for us to understand that, but now we need to ask about what about much more complex machines? And if evolution can't explain it, then we should be free to consider other alternatives. And as I said earlier, often scientists are really reticent to do that because it doesn't fit the story that they want to tell. Science should be about the pursuit of truth. I'd always, when I was growing up in school, I always thought science was about pursuing the truth, no matter how it comes out. We don't like this force of gravity. We don't like the way things develop. It doesn't matter. What matters is what's the truth. So at this point, where's the evidence point? Does it point towards or away from a creator? Think about that yourself. Which way are we going here? Is this scientific evidence that we're developing point towards a creator or away from a creator and just back to random mutations? Behe has written a book, which I'm sure you don't want to read now, but maybe later on you will, of this or a book like it. It's called Darwin Devolves, the new science about DNA that challenges evolution. So interesting point here. Some people will tell us that science, as we've developed science, points away from a need for God and it can explain everything, and we don't need to worry about God because science will give us all the answers. Where the fact is, as we develop more and more science, it's actually pointing us towards God, towards something out there besides what Darwin has claimed is happening with just random accidental mutations. Well, you're looking at a copy of, I think, the original edition of The Origin of Species by Darwin, Charles Darwin. The full title of it is On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection or the Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life. Now, when Darwin wrote this, as we've said earlier, he didn't know much about what was really inside the cells. And there was objections to it raised by other people at the time. But a lot of people just sort of wanted to break free of the church, it seems, and wanted to sort of become their own gods. And so this was their vehicle to do that. If they could look at this book and say, my gosh, this man, Charles Darwin, as you recall, started out to become a priest in the Anglican Church. He started his studies there. Then he went on the cruise on the Beagle as an assistant to the captain and found all his so-called evidence for his book, came back, wrote his book, and sort of changed the world for the worse. And this book, though, is used more than just for the science or the pseudoscience or the ideas that are in it. People have grasped on it, and you'll see, like Richard Dawkins has said famously, although atheism might have been logically tenable before Darwin, Darwin made it possible to be an intellectually fulfilled atheist. You probably see in there a little bit of the fallacy we talked about earlier, where he's trying to say, well, if you believe Darwin, now you can be intellectually fulfilled, a very smart person, And of course, you would be an atheist if you know what Darwin had to say. So that's kind of how that's been used. And yet now the house of cards is beginning to fall as science continues to march on and find out that it's really not quite the way Darwin thought it was. And there's a problem with this naturalistic explanation. So again, a reminder for next week, I want you to read The Case for a Creator, Student Edition, Chapter 6. It's called DNA. You hear a lot about DNA these days. DNA testing can tell you where your ancestors came from, if you're part Indian or part European or whatever you're part of, and maybe even help you find relatives if you're on Ancestry.com. DNA and the origin of life. Inside DNA is a lot of information, tons of information. And information, in our experience, really doesn't just show up by itself. It's transmitted by an intelligent being. So we're going to see even more of adding sort of nails in the coffin of Darwinism. During this time, I mentioned this last week, during the next few weeks as this coronavirus disrupts the world, we may well have an opportunity, maybe an unprecedented opportunity, to share our faith and Christ's love with others. And although we as apologists tend to like to use arguments and logic and that sort of thing, keep in mind that people may be scared to death and really uncomfortable with what's going on here. This is really unprecedented. I've never seen anything quite like this in my life. On the other hand, I've known Christ for most of my life, and I am absolutely comfortable that God knows what he's doing. He is not only the Lord of the cosmos and the creator of the cosmos, he's the Lord of the viruses as well, and we're going to end up just fine. But those who don't know Christ, don't know Jesus, may need a little conversation, a little comforting. So keep in mind that, as I've said before, sometimes people don't really need a good argument or a good logical explanation. They just need a hug. Well, don't hug them, but stay 6 feet away. But you know what I mean, a virtual hug. That just somebody that cares and will have compassion and help them understand what's going on, and to see that in the worldview and in the view of the Bible and in God's presence and caring for us. We talked before, I think once, I'm not sure I ever showed you this video, but it's a cool video and I want to show it to you. It has to do with teaching versus training. So a lot of apologists, and myself included, have said we're going to stop teaching apologetics in favor of training apologetics. I've told you this class is something like a sports camp where we're going to come, we do role playing, we learn the arguments, we practice the arguments, we practice using them on each other so that when we get out into the real world and someone challenges our faith or the faith of a fellow Christian, we can help maybe put things in perspective and get the truth out there. The teaching, this is an example that I'm going to use because I come from the military. As you all know, I'm a retired naval aviator. This is not what aviators do, although I have done this as part of my training to become an aviator. This guy is, I think, probably an Army guy, maybe a Marine, maybe a SEAL, who knows, jumping out of an airplane. Now, look at that. I did it with a static line, by the way. I didn't just jump like this. I had a static line that opened my parachute right after I left the plane. But look at that. You're jumping out of an airplane. Look at the earth down there. It's a ways away. And these guys are doing that. And they didn't do that by learning in a book. They didn't go to a classroom. They did do part classroom, but they didn't just do a classroom. They went through training. These guys are hanging in a sort of a static situation. You can see the cords going up to the ceiling, to the mechanism there. They get how it feels to their body to be hanging in a parachute harness. And these guys we didn't have this when I did it, but they have virtual reality. They can sort of see what it's going to be like to jump out of that airplane and what it's going to be like before they actually jump. And then where I went at Fort Benning, they have these things. This is called the 35-foot tower. You jump out and you go down a little line and you hit some plowed up dirt, kind of soft dirt, and just practice landing. And then you go to a thing called a 500-foot tower where they take you up and then release you and you actually float down 500 feet. So let's take a quick look at this training video. This video is not one for parachutists. This one's actually a little bit more exotic, I think. This is some of the training they do or did, I think they still do, for astronauts, where they want to get them familiar with what it's like to be in zero G. In other words, no gravity. In space, there's no gravity, not as much gravity anyway. You float around space capsules, you float around the International Space Station. I'm sure you've seen that. But you kind of got to get used to it. It makes your body all messed up. There is no up or down. You just have to kind of float around and learn how to maneuver. You're not going to learn that in a classroom. You're going to learn it by practicing it. And because there's nowhere on Earth that there is no gravity, they take them up in an airplane and do some special training by taking the airplane, pushing the nose over so that the plane is going down at the same speed you would be falling from gravity. It gives the impression that you're weightless, and in fact you are inside the airplane. So let's take a look at this. It's just kind of a fun video, but I want to re-emphasize that's what we're doing with apologetics. We want to practice against each other. We want to learn what arguments other people might make, what wrong arguments they might make, so that we can bring the truth to them. So let's take a look at the video right now. Wow, does that look like fun or what? I would love to do that. I've been close to being able to do it a couple times, but have not managed to do it. But hopefully someday that's on my bucket list, something I'd love to do, go up in a plane like that. You can do that. There are companies that will sell you a trip in that airplane, and I would really love to do that. So someday we'll see what happens. The reason I've got courage up on the screen is you think about those guys jumping out of the airplane. That took a certain amount of courage and faith, if you will, or belief that everything's going to work right, that parachute's going to work right, their training's going to work right, and they're going to be okay when they jump out of the plane, especially on the first jump. I remember the first time I jumped out of an airplane. They have us all sitting in rows they're not like an airliner. There's just benches across both sides of the airplane. And as we flew out to the jump zone, I was sitting on my bench along with everybody else. And the sergeant came in and said, stand up. And that's what you do first. You stand up, you hook up to the line, and then you go back to the door and you jump out. And I remember I tried to stand up and I couldn't. My legs wouldn't work. And I thought, my gosh, this is what it's like to be frozen with fear. I've heard that term before, but apparently you can be so terrified that you're just frozen. You can't move. And then the sergeant pointed out that I hadn't unfastened my seatbelt, and that's why I couldn't stand up. So once I got that out of the way, I was ready to go. But the courage that it takes to do that is really, in a way, what I want to talk to you about, the courage it takes to talk to someone about their faith or about your faith. Sometimes it's really scary. I remember the first time a professor at Biola told me in order to pass his course, I had to go out and talk to some Muslims about their faith, about what Islam's about, and to the extent they would would let me do it, talk to them about Christianity. And I honestly, sitting in that classroom that night, I was thinking, I'm going to just have to drop this course because I'm not going to do that. That's terrifying. Well, it turns out it wasn't. I now love to talk to Muslims about their faith and about Jesus and about how their faith came about and what we believe. And I find that one of the main things that I incur in talking to Muslims is they don't know what we believe. They think we're wrong, but they don't know what it is. And when they learn a little bit more about what we actually believe and who Jesus really is, sometimes it can have an impact, I think. So it's worth a shot. So I'm encouraging you to have courage as you go out and you have an opportunity to witness to people, you see the chance, take it. You all know who John Wayne is. You know he's not an airport. He's actually a guy that was an actor. He used to play in a lot of westerns. He was always the big macho hero guy. Very nice man. I had a chance to meet him a couple of times, and actually got a chance to show him a magic trick once when he was filming a movie. But that's who he is. His statue is inside John Wayne Airport. He used to live in Newport Beach. That's why they named the airport after him. But he defined courage as being scared to death and saddling up anyway. In other words, you're not likely to get away from your fear, particularly the first few times you do something. And you may be scared to death, but saddle up anyway. Go on out and give it a shot. And don't do anything stupid, but if you've been trained properly and your training is good and you've thought it through and you know you can do it, just go ahead and give it a shot. So I'd like to encourage you all while you're at home, maybe do a little role playing with your parents, your brothers, sisters, friends, and you can be the atheist with an attitude, or you can be the Christian. Let them be the atheist with an attitude. But just practice having a conversation with people, and remember to be gracious and kind, and look for fallacies and look for opportunities to correct their beliefs when they're wrong. And you can both role play. One of you can be, an atheist, and the other one can be the Christian, back and forth. But I'd encourage you to do that while you're at home. It beats playing a computer game. And also, as you're at home and looking, as you're maybe contemplating that and getting ready to do that role play, don't just Google your questions. Always seek answers from reputable sources. I can find you an answer on Google that tells you anything you want to believe. Often people just Google something, get an answer, don't even look at who the source is, or is that really a good argument? But wow, if it's on Google or if it's on the internet, it must be true. Not so. As we've talked about with the celebrities trying to pitch various products and ideas. You can't believe everything you hear. So be sure you're always looking for reputable sources. If you need any of those, any advice on that, be sure and give me a call, let me know, and I'll be happy to help you do it. Remember, as you go out your front door, you're going in the servant's entrance. The world is out there waiting for you to help them. Let's be servants during this time. Let's serve people. Let's show them what a Christian lives like, and what the reason for our belief and our hope. And one thing more, if you need to reach me, if you have any questions at all, I'm available to chat with you anytime. You can email me at tedshawn@me.com, or feel free to call me on my mobile. It's 949-678-7510. I'm doing pretty much all of my work for my company at home, and so I'm available. If you don't reach me, just leave me a voicemail. I should get back to you right away. And I would be happy to talk to you about any questions or concerns or ideas you have. And I would be really happy to get your feedback on these videos. If there's something I can do to improve them, I would love to do it. First time I've done these videos like this, and so there's always a learning curve. And I would really be happy to hear from you. Good, bad, and different suggestions for improvement especially. I would love that. So with that, let me pray for us, and then we will be on our way for another week. Eternal Father, we thank you that we have you to rely upon in times like this that are challenging to us, and we hear about things going on all around the world that are really strange and a little bit scary. And Lord, I just thank you that we have you to go to you to rely upon. You created us, you love us, and you care for us, and we thank you for that. And Lord, I pray that we as
apologists as we are out in the world and talking to people online and by phone and even in person, that we will be bold, that we'll have the courage we need to help people understand who Jesus is. If ever they were in a position to wonder about Jesus and wonder for the reason for our hope, it would be now. And then Easter's coming up, Lord, another opportunity for us to share our faith and to help point people to the cross. So pray that you'll give us courage, give us wisdom and discernment as we go out to try to glorify you in this world. We ask this in the name of your Son, our Savior, Jesus. Guys, have a good week. Call me if you need to. I look forward to seeing you all in a couple of weeks back at school. And if not, we'll continue doing this, and we'll see you soon. Have a good week.